So, welcome. This is It's Meaningless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who are within the first 5 years of business, who are tired of stuck and are ready to face the brutal truth. Here we uncover the meaningless daily habits that keep you from protecting and growing in life and in business. This is episode 15. When to do it yourself. When to do it yourself. Um, so I grew up. My dad is number one, like very intelligent, um, very hard worker, um, and so um, and kind of tight, kind of tight. Uh, so we had a lot of do-it-yourself projects growing up at home. Um, like my dad would work on cars. Like he would. I think he kind of did. He change? Yes, he changed. He may have changed the oil sometimes. But like brakes, working on brakes, changing brakes on cars. Um, he'd do other kind of stuff. Um, and then of course, as far as the house was concerned, like there were always projects that uh he'd jump into. Not huge things, but like just normal stuff. If something broke, more than likely, like probably 95 plus percent of the time, it was him fixing it. So, um, yeah, well, I'd say even more than that, like in just about anything, like there was so much, um, that, I don't know, that you could pay other people to do that we just did not. So fast forward to me growing up or being out on my own. Uh, I had a house um um about um, I'm trying to remember back. Well, I guess it's about 4 or 5 years ago. House I had about 4 or 5 years ago. I had it for about 10 years, and actually I bought it as somewhat of a fixer upper. A lot of projects to do. So talk about do it yourself. Like I didn't stop with the minor stuff. Um, like I got into like moving walls, including one putting up new walls, including one that was low bearing. Um, and I had like three three car projects in the yard, uh, in the garage and in the yard. Uh, of course, simultaneously. Um, at the same time, I'm trying to build a business, and uh, yeah. So I guess this this episode kind of goes into like why, like why and when. So I'll say this like to begin with, like those of you who are into do it yourself, like you know why. Like number one, it's kind of fun. The thrill of hmm, like yesterday I couldn't do this. Yesterday I didn't know anything about this. Uh, and today I get the opportunity to see if I can take a crack at it. And then I was on a call, I think Monday, earlier this week, and one of the things the person leading the meeting was talking about was the fact that some people and he was talking of himself, and I'm definitely one of those people, but effectively, some people are kind of like, yeah, variety junkies. Well, yeah, pretty much. Like you like variety, you like to change things up, you like different. Um, and for me, like that's especially true when it comes to learning. Um, so you may have noticed like I wear a uniform. Um, so I pretty much have the same stuff on. Well, I actually got a weekend uniform too, but I pretty much have the same stuff on uh, for when I'm, out and about. Uh, but frankly, the only reason for that is it's just way easier. So while while I like to change things up, I'm also somewhat practical in the sense of like how much time is it gonna take? And of course, this is where we're kind of headed in this podcast. But effectively, it becomes an issue of like what's most important. So either we can like take the time to like I guess worship variety in itself. In other words, go just seeking variety for variety's sake. Which I don't know. I mean, I guess it's maybe I guess it can be fun. And some of you probably tell me, yeah, it is. But the thing is, the thing is, I look at is like it can't be fun for long because variety for variety's sake means that like I never get anything done. Nothing ever gets done. Nothing ever gets accomplished. Um, so like obviously there has to be a balance of okay variety and consistency. Um, but yes, like variety is like changing things up, having new things. Like I said, for me, when it comes to learning, that's usually where I kind of like splurge on this variety concept. I like to kind of read new things, like with books. Kind of I have I definitely like to read. I'm not the best reader, but I definitely like to. But like at the most, I've gotten to the place of like having like 12 different books that I was reading at the same time. Um, and so yes, I definitely definitely like to do different stuff. Um, so that's part of the thrill of kind of the do-it-yourself thing. But there's a button here. Um, the but is, I guess, when does that go too far? Um, when does it go too far? Um, and I think part of I touched on it a little bit already, but the thing we'll keep coming back to in this conversation is the the concept, the idea of what effectively a few questions that are aimed at I guess hitting the same answer, which are what are you for? What am I for? Um, what's my purpose? What's your purpose? What are you about? Why are you here? And then by here, I mean like in whatever space that you're in. Um, like effectively, the answer to those questions will kind of give you an idea of, I guess it'll form the basis for what really should be prioritized most in your life, your time, your schedule. And like time actually becomes a really yeah, because of the why, like why you're here, what you're for, what you're about, what you're called to do. Because of those things, like time becomes a really big factor in deciding, like, is this something that I should do myself or not? And so, uh, really complexity. Uh, Complexity, I guess, in terms of the do it yourself projects, whatever. I want to call it. I want to say it's like a two-edged sword because maybe not a two-edged sword. I guess you could say more. It's like two sides of the same coin. So while on one hand, complexity is kind of the reason for most people, for many people that are engaged in like do-it-yourself stuff, that they want to get into it, because it's kind of complex to see. Oh, can I do this? So for some people, that's the case. On the other hand, complexity is also the reason why sometimes we probably would be better off not jumping into into projects because of, again, like, where am I headed? What am I for? What is it that you're called to do? Like, what's your purpose right now? And so, because of the fact, like, we live in a world of, I don't want to call it a world of scarcity. Like, I know that's the economic thing, like, um, that, like, scarcity, blah 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 blah. Like, effectively, just to put it succinctly, we live in a world of with limited resources. So, with time being one of those, like, we only have so much in terms of resources that are allotted to us. So, with that said, like, how we choose to use the time that we have is kind of important, especially when there are things that, like, we know on purpose that we want to do, we need to do, um that there are things specifically that we want to accomplish. And so how we use the resources that we have are kind of important because they determine, like, do I make it to this goal or not? So, which is kind of a big deal. I think most people think it's a big deal. So let's jump into, I won't say let's jump into, I guess, kind of a little scenario of, yeah, of kind of a do-it-yourself thing. So this podcast is mainly for entrepreneurs. So we, um one of the, I guess probably most likely scenarios is, I mean, you're in your business, like, you have, which, I mean, I'm gonna go to on a side tangent for a small bit, because there's one caveat to this conversation, which is being in business, been in business, especially starting out. If you're starting out, there are not really many people, um, that are, or not many people on your team, or it's just you. Then, like, the thing is said is, like, for small businesses, for startups, for small business owners, for solopreneurs, like, there's a time in the season where you are wearing all the hats. And so that may be a season, may, and I do mean may be a season for inside the business that like all the things that you need to move the business ahead, like you are doing all the things, maybe. However, in many cases, it's not necessarily the case. So um at the very so for most people, like at the very least, like you could probably stand to hire a bookkeeper, like 20, 30, $40 an hour for I don't know how much time. Like for me, it's usually about 2 hours. I don't know, every couple weeks, 1 or 2 hours a week, something like that. So for most people, especially if you got volume going, you got sales going, like you could probably like stand to at least do that. That way, that's one thing you don't have to worry about. One thing is off your plate. Same with like you're probably be good to have like filing your own taxes off your plate, especially for the business at the very least, at least preparing them. Um, so, and again, so you were here, like you're here, you're starting a business, you're in a business, you're running a business, and there are various competing responsibilities, needs, things that need to be taken care of that are on your plate or that need to be done. Somebody needs to do them. So whether or not it's one of your employees, one of your contractors, even in delivering the end product to the clients that you serve, deciding like what piece of the work product do I personally need to do, and what do I need to hand off to somebody else. So, which is kind of important, especially when you're growing and or looking to grow. Like mindset wise, it's good to always be in the mindset of like what's most important for me to do, and what needs to be like hand it off to somebody else, even if you're not ready. Like even if you don't have a budget to hand it off to somebody else, even if you haven't really built it out to hand it off to somebody else, at the very least you can be of a mindset to know ahead of time this is definitely something that I want to hand off to somebody else. So uh, that is it. In fact, so for me, probably that's been something that I've invested a lot in over the past 2 years, especially, is kind of planning out like how do I offload this? How do I get somebody else to do this part? And in running a business, that I believe that I believe that really should be something that we're consistently looking at. Not necessarily that it needs to change all the time, but at the same time, I think we we'd be better served to be in a mindset constantly of looking for areas to grow that, improve that, change that in case it doesn't need to change. So before we finish up, I want to go through, I guess, some kind of indicators, if you will, of like whether like this do-it-yourself thing is something I need to be involved in, or if it'd be better if I left this one alone. So couple factors. Number one, so again, it's about purpose. What, in other words, what is it? And this is probably one of the most important parts, and more than likely, like we'll be talking about this more and more in future episodes to build on it a little more. But eventually, it'd be good if you had not already, like, to take the time to I don't know, like, go off, like, take some time away. I told you, I mentioned that I usually take, like, at once a quarter. I take 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 days usually, to just go off, think, pray, um, just kind of plan for, like, what's next, plan for the upcoming quarter. And part of that is time to reflect on and get clear on, like, what is it I'm supposed to be doing, what's most important right now. And so that would be my encouragement to you, not necessarily that you have to do it in that format, but somehow, like, if you're taking time just to journal or write things down, or however you do it, to be able to, at some point, to be able to clearly have on paper, have somewhere written down, like, what is it, what is it I'm called to do? Like, what's the, more than anything else, like, what is the thing that, I guess, is kind of at the top of the list of my priorities, of, like, what I'm supposed to accomplish, what's for me to accomplish, what I've decided to accomplish. So I think that's first and foremost. And it may be two things, it may be three things, probably not. But I mean, even there is a good starting place. If you can narrow it down to three things, like, that's big. So it's better than not having anything narrowed down. So I think that's the first place to start when we're talking about evaluating whether or not a do-it-yourself project is something to engage in. A specific do-it-yourself project is something to engage in. Because once you have that, your number one priority, kind of narrowed down, then everything else that is other opportunities, other projects that come up, you can simply match against it and say, does this match against this? In other words, does this line up with this thing that I've determined is my priority, is what I'm supposed to be focused on? And if it doesn't, it doesn't mean you don't do it, but it does mean that you don't you don't take that new project on if it's going to conflict with the time that you have allotted for, if it's going to conflict with you accomplishing, like, what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So that's to me, that's the number one um factor for vetting, like, is this project something I need to be put my time and effort into. um Second under that is, for me, second under that, I'd say, is interest. Like, that's simply fun. Am I going to enjoy this thing? Um, uh, yeah, am I going to enjoy it? Like, is this something that, yeah, it's going to be super fun? Like, if not, and especially if it's not like the core of what you're in line with, the core of what you're trying to accomplish, um, then to me, that's an easy no brainer. Um, so part of why sometimes we would take on some part of what part, so part of why sometimes we take on projects or do it yourself stuff that isn't really, we wouldn't really receive or perceive as fun, is calling ourselves trying to save money, which, um it's usually like if you're talking about savings for do it yourself, it's usually money and not time. Um, Sometimes it's time, and then when that's the case, there can definitely be a bigger argument for that. But most times it's trying to save money, and in the end, most of the times we take on do-it-yourself projects simply for simply for the purpose of saving money. Um, like if you really took the time to go and do the calculations of what it costs you to not have somebody else do it, more times than not, like you probably lost money by doing it yourself. Whether it's the amount of extra time that you had to sacrifice, for instance, so like um this Thanksgiving, I went to drove to Atlanta. Well, not drove. Went to Atlanta for Thanksgiving, and a lot of times I drive, which is like a 12-hour drive. And sometimes, like, sometimes it's about saving money. Um, I say though, in addition to that, I like to drive. Um, I do like to drive. And so, frankly, if it came down to between like flying or driving, like depending on the distance, like I would definitely prefer to drive. But um, for this one, because it's kind of a quick trip, and I have like a lot of stuff on my plate, a lot of stuff to do. Um, it was a thing of like, okay, why don't I just like if I if like if this comes down to just about saving money, like then why not like why not buy a ticket, like spend a few $100, buy a plane ticket, if I can find one, um, and then because effectively driving would cost me about that much anyway. So and then without having to spend a bunch of time waiting or on the road, which I don't know, I can make the most of that time. I listen to podcasts and um, kind of catch up on, I guess, my audio learning. So like, there's benefit in that, but which goes into like the conversation we're having right now. It's not necessarily like the most important thing that I'm working on at that time. So um, it would have been better. It was better for me to say, no, let me not try to save money on this. Let me just, yeah, let me just spend the money that I was gonna spend anyway, just all the same up front, which doesn't really make a really make a difference. So those are the kind of things that like we can take the time to think about more, so to think through a little bit more in terms of, do we engage in this project or not. um, and then I guess the only other thing I'd mention on this is uh, learning curve, so which is pretty much in lines with time. Like what is the learning curve for me doing it myself, like doing this thing myself? In other words, is this something I've already done before? Is this something I'm already experienced with? Is it going to take me more time, or does it have the potential, is the better question, to take me more time than I expect it to? In other words, taking time away from things that um, taking time away from things that would kind of mess me up, or things that I'm supposed to be focused on, things I'm really called to be focused on uh, right now in this time. So those are some kind of things to think through in this conversation. Like I said, I like jumping into do it yourself projects, they're fun. I enjoy them. But at the same time, like there has to be some limit. Like I can't do all the projects. Even though I might feel like I want to, I can't do them all. So I've learned and I am learning to like have fun and enjoy the projects that I do take on, and at the same time be able to say no to the ones that just they're not gonna work. So anyway, that's all I have for today. Take care. Bye.